Hey guys, and welcome back to Art. For this week we are going to take our design that we created the first week and our can, and we're going to put those together to make sort of a final image. We're not going to color it yet this week, but we do want to figure out how we're going to draw it on the can. So if you look at mine, Pipa Vida here, I have a coconut and a surfboard. These are all things that I want to kind of add onto my can, and I created an interesting font. I want to try to have that similar looking but nicer looking on my can because that is going to be my final artwork. So before I get going showing you guys how to create the can, getting it the way that you want to look, I'm going to show you the example that I created for mine. So I've tilted the can sideways so we can see it a little bit bigger. You can see the font that I have is very similar. The logo is very similar. The font for the Surf More Hydrate Less is kind of a designed font. It's not my handwriting. And then I've added some extra details like the 10-calorie thing in there. There's some other things we can add into our cans as we go to make it look more like an actual product. Hey guys, so for the first part of this project, we want to figure out where we want our words to go for our can. So for me, I decided I want mine to go vertical, straight up and down. You might want yours horizontal or diagonal. And really, we're not going to start by writing any letters. We want to start by drawing a box to fit the letters in. So I drew from the top of my can to the bottom of my can, and then I figured out how wide I want my font to go, and then I drew another line straight down. Now these lines won't be there in the end, so I want to draw them super light because I'm going to have all of them erased when we have our final project. Alright, so now that we've created the space or the shape for our word to fit in, what we need to do is start breaking that space up into smaller spaces for one for each letter. So my word is Pipa Vida, so that's 8 letters. That means I need 8 spaces, and I'm starting to do that by dividing this in half. And I don't divide this in half with a straight line. If you look at it, that line is the same curve as the curve above it and below it. You need to try to do this when you're drawing your can. It'll help it make it look like your design is actually on the can and that it's not sitting flat up against it. Because the word itself might be flat, but when it's pressed along the can, it's going to bend with the shape of the can. So we need to replicate those same lines. So I want you to kind of do the same thing with all the rest of the lines you're making. Now that we've divided it in half once, we have 2 spaces. Now we need to divide those spaces in half again. So we need 2 more lines and half of those, and now we've created 4 total spaces. We're halfway there for how many letters we're using in our word. All we need to do to get to the rest of those 8 is to divide each of those spaces equally in half with curved lines, the same curve that we see above and below. Once you've created and divided those in half, you will be left with 8 spaces. The next step is to draw lightly over and create your word on top of them. This next part can be a little tricky. This is where I'm going to be drawing the font, my word, Pipa Vida, trying to make it look like the logo or the font that I've created. You can see the lines that I created. I've kind of made them a little bit lighter in this example. In all reality, they should be drawn lighter because you're going to have to erase them in the end. Try to fit the letters in as best you can, and try to keep it as close to the font that you originally kind of chose so that it looks more like your design or your brand that you're creating. Alright, so the next step is pretty simple. We're just going to erase the grid that we created underneath, leaving just our logo and our brand on top of the can. This is basically what you'll need to get to the next step. We want to make sure that our letters are clearly drawn and very nicely drawn and that our grid is gone. That being said, mine had 8 letters in my word Pipa Vida. Yours might have 3. If it has 3, then you need to divide your space up into make 3 equal parts. If yours has 4 or 5, 6, 7 letters, you need to try to create yours to match the same amount of letters in your word. So don't try to do 8 if you don't have an 8-letter word like I do. Once you've created your font the way you want it to look on the can, the next would be to add the logo. For me, mine was coconut cut in half and a surfboard, and I kind of had to position it in a few different ways to try to get it to fit on there what I thought looked like the best. Don't just put it on the can anywhere. You have to really think about where you want to put it. And when you draw it, use simple lines and shapes. Draw very lightly, and when you think you've got it the way you like it, then you can draw a little bit darker and erase the sketch lines that you did when you put it on the can. All right, so now we are almost finished our can. We need to add in our slogan. When you put your slogan on there, find a good place where it fits, and you can write it pretty large where people can read it. And when you write it, guys, don't just use your regular handwriting. I want you to try to create some type of nice looking font that looks better than something that you're going to just scribble down with your hand. So if you look, we've got an example here of the close-up. You can see the letters are kind of just interestingly drawn. They're not really just scribbled down there. I really want you to think about how you're putting them down, how straight they are. If it's really printed on a can, it's going to be really thought about from every angle. Don't just scribble on the can. So for the last step, you guys can feel free to add something on there like 12 ounces or how many calories it is. You can look and see here, I kind of created a little box with a little arrow that has like 10 calorie, and the letters that I wrote in 10 calorie, those are in a different font. So we have 3 fonts on here: the People Vita font, the Surf More Hydrate Less font, and then the 10 calorie font. If you look at a can or a design that a brand that has been created, there's a lot of different fonts all over it. So, and they're not handwriting fonts. I want you guys to really think about them, really make them look nice, and really think when you put something on the can, is this something that I would drink? Because if it's something that you just kind of scribbled down, I'm pretty sure nobody's going to grab it out of the refrigerator and want to drink it. So think about that when you're creating your design. Okay, so lastly, I wanted to show you guys what it would look like if you wanted to create your letters horizontal or diagonal. I created these horizontal here. You can see the curves in the can match the top curves and the bottom curves. So when I make my space, I need to think about it like that. I had to split my word up in 2 because my letters didn't really fit that well horizontal. The same goes for diagonal. You're going to add a little bit of a curve. It's not going to be the same curve as the top and bottom, but it's going to have a curve moving up. And you can see here how my letters got really crammed in. That's probably because 8 letters is probably too much to do it for diagonal. If you have something with 4 or less letters, that might work really well for diagonal or horizontal. Okay guys, so I know this video ended up being a little bit longer than most of your other videos, but that's because we have a lot of details that we kind of had to cover with how we can make this look official. I really want you guys drawing lightly when you're kind of plotting everything down on the can, and once you get it the way you like, you can trace it with a skinny black marker or a black pen. Just if it has really fine detail, make sure that you're using a really fine pen or a really skinny marker. Basically, this is it. I turn the can sideways so you can see it again, what it looks like finished. Trace it when you're done, upload it, and I'll check it out and see what you guys are working on and how they look. Don't color. We're going to cover that next week. Can't wait to see what everyone's making. Bye, guys.